All right, thank you for bearing with us. All right, welcome everyone to Critical Conversations 3.1. This is the third in a series of these events, and this series will have three episodes. Our first is today, and I'd like to welcome our guests, Emanuel Shahaf, Dr. Warda Sada, and Josef Avesar. Welcome.
Hello.
And Peter van Geldern, our distinguished host. Thank you for hosting and facilitating today, Peter. And I'll be hosting. So I'd like to start just by offering some opening remarks. And first, I wanted to share with you the mission of the Middle East Peace Civic Forum. We create communication, inspire vision, and empower action that bring about real peace and lasting transformation to all impacted by the Israeli-Palestinian relationship. And the Critical Conversation series is designed as a space for straight and authentic communication and expression and real, deep, thoughtful listening. Our intention is to foster real peace and genuine reconciliation and ground ourselves in common humanity. So just speaking as a Jew, I've been really fortunate to have so many warm and wonderful relationships with Muslims. And I know personally of many warm interfaith relationships among Jews and Muslims, and of course, with their friends who are Christian and Hindu and all different religions or no religion at all. But just the richness of what's possible through peace and reconciliation is something that inspires me, and I know a lot of us to keep doing this work. And that experience tells me that peace is really possible. And of course, we have to be present to the terrible suffering and the unworkability of war and the fighting and just the back and forth violence. And of course, October 7th, 2023 was a very dark day for the Jewish people. But we all know that the conflict in the Holy Land didn't start on that day. And I believe there can be a silver lining to the terrible violence of the last year. And part of that is grounded in a belief that there's a realization that's beginning to sink in, that something has to give. We don't know what it's going to look like, but something has to give. The status quo really isn't working for anybody. And the mutual commitment our peoples have to prevail at all costs in a military victory, to me, is a bit ridiculous. And it seems that there's two camps that's each certain of its positions and justifications. And the cost of war is great, and the consequences are real and painful. And of course, there's regional powers that are focusing their efforts on the region. You've got Iran putting its treasure in and projecting its own sphere of influence. You've got the United States, which is very fractured and in an election season, and we're deeply involved and closely allied with Israel, but also seeking to be a balanced broker for real peace. And we believe ultimately the path to stability and peace runs through the Israelis and Palestinians themselves. And it's up to them to reach some form of accommodation with one another. And of course, there are many reasons and justifications for all the different positions out there, whether biblical, historical, demographic, or otherwise. And that relates to the kind of political framework we'd all like to see in place. But at the end of the party, what's going to happen is that either one party will vanquish the other and claim a total victory, or the two sides will reach a negotiated mutual accommodation of some form. And so in that spirit today, we think that a mutual accommodation is going to be a lot less painful and a lot more desirable than just continuing to suffer through violence. You know, we're all, if we believe that we're created truly in the image of God, then we can do better and we can come from a more enlightened place and a spirit of real peace and reconciliation. So today we're going to hear about three different visions for potential political frameworks in the region. And I'll start that by introducing our guests and our facilitator. So again, welcome to Emanuel, Warda, and Joseph. Welcome.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Peter.
Good to be here.
thank you all.
It's so good to be with you today. So I'll start with Emanuel. So Emanuel, as I resize my notes here. So Emanuel was born in Germany in 1954 and immigrated to Israel in 1972. He studied aeronautical engineering at the Technion, the Israel Institute of Technology, and went on to serve as a staff officer in the Israel Air Force. He then spent 2 years in the US studying for an MBA in Management of Technology in New York, and in 1988 returned to Israel, joined the office of the Prime Minister, and worked in various positions at home and abroad. And then he's been very involved in developing Israeli business relationships with Indonesia, and active in the Israeli Labor Party, and competing for a place on Labor's Knesset list in 2012. And he writes a blog and has a website. And Emanuel, welcome. We're very glad to have you here today.
Good to be with you.
And Warda is from Kfar Yassif in northern Israel. She's a Palestinian Israeli and mother of 3 young children. Warda, you're an educator, taught high school chemistry for 10 years and social leadership and other topics for 28 years at a college in Israel. She's been active in more than 20 peace and human rights organizations, including Amnesty International, and was named a peace ambassador at an international women's conference in South Korea recently. And Josef Avesar, he'll be speaking today about the Confederation system. And Joseph was born in Israel and now lives in Southern California. You're a practicing attorney and the author of the book, Peace, A Case for an Israeli-Palestinian Confederation. And Joseph has been very active in promoting the idea of a confederation and even hosting mock government meetings of the Confederation, which is quite interesting. So really, all of you have very interesting perspectives, and I'm excited to hear from you all today. Now I'll just introduce myself very briefly, and then Peter, and then I'll turn it over to our facilitator. So my name's Matt Lakenbach. I'm the founder and director of the Middle East Peace Civic Forum. I have a master's degree in international peace and conflict resolution from American University in Washington, D.C., with a concentration in the Middle East and international communication. And I did my honors research on the Oslo peace process and looked at the breakdown of that process. And I've traveled within Israel, including a high school program where I learned all about Jewish history, and then traveled to the places where it happened. And I founded the Middle East Peace Civic Forum because I saw the need for a real thoughtful and spiritual voice calling for genuine peace and a historical reconciliation between Israelis and Palestinians. It's an issue very close to my heart. And Peter van Geldern, welcome Peter today. Peter's our facilitator, and he's a director at Middle East Peace Civic Forum with accountability in organizational governance and communication. Peter's an architect, an established professional, and he ran a production company in New York City for over 20 years, focusing on filmmaking and event production for peacemaking and focused nonprofits, and was an adjunct professor for 10 years at University of Bridgeport's International Politics and Diplomacy College, teaching mass communication. He's a book author of Regenerating America, which designs new models of governments and entrepreneurial collaborative companies. And he's currently leading a startup called Future in the Hudson Valley, focused on regenerative community building and implementing international affordable housing initiatives. So Peter, with that, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I'm really excited to be with you guys today, with everybody. We're so privileged to be with such leaders in this space. It's not easy to be a peacemaker. So we'll get started very soon, but I'll just set up the ground rules. I know some of you are even hearing bombs in the background, some of our audience and our speakers today. So that's another acknowledgement of being here today. So yeah, very simply, we want to have sort of a concise presentation of the different political frameworks that you've all been working on. Just 5 to 7 minutes. Take time to present. with clarity. We all want to see like some viable political and practical solutions in the world. And then what we'll do is Matt and I will, what we call recreate. We'll take out some of the key points as we see it, and we'll even open it up to our speakers to look for like what are the big takeaways that you heard from our other speakers. So we're really looking for a creative platform today where we can create together. So it's a little bit, it might move a little bit quickly, but we'll make sure we get to the real content. And then we'll open it up again at the end for more like organic give and take around what we heard today, and bring into maybe a creative process of what will really make an impact, or where we see possibility for peace. Today's call is not open to the audience, but we want to encourage the audience to direct message and comment in the YouTube channel. This live YouTube is a place where we're going to have dialogue and feedback. But today is really just about holding the space for a powerful conversation and letting everyone be heard. So it's a deep listening of what you are all up to as peacemakers. So the order is going to be, we'll start with Emanuel, then Warda, then Joseph. So Emanuel, you're up. Please share with us some of you and anything about yourself that we missed. We really want to hear about your professional accolades or your books or anything else.
You didn't mention my book. I wrote a book called Identity: The Quest for Israel's Future. It's available on Amazon. And it's an autobiography which includes the Federation proposal, which I'm going to present to you now in the next 7 minutes.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that's, if you want a deeper dive into Emanuel's work, it's in the book.
All right. So I think everybody realizes that two states, the two-state solution is not realistic anymore, especially after 7th of October. Not that it was before, but there was nothing else on the table. And still, many countries are still talking about the two-state solution, but both the Palestinians and Israelis, it's only about 25% of the population supports the two-state solution as it is now. And there's definitely no support in Israeli politics, as Warda pointed out from the from her experience at the Knesset. There is no support whatsoever. There are other reasons not to have the two-state solution, not only that it can't be implemented, and that's that it's bad for the Palestinians, very bad for the Palestinians, because the Palestinian economy depends on Israel, and putting up a border between the two countries, which is what the Israeli view is, they over here, over there, we over here, and tall wall in between, that will cause lasting damage to the Palestinian economy. And also has an impact on relations with Israeli Arabs, who at this time have only one country to be loyal to. And when there's Palestine, there will be another country to be loyal to. And that's a problem, because then the Israelis may want to push them into that country, and there may be another Nakba. So that pretty much precludes to go ahead with the two-state solution. So what kind of approach do we need? We need a visionary approach, something that can get wide support, wide political support, meaning on the left and on the right, which pretty much precludes withdrawal from the West Bank. And also public support, we need that. We need one that is clearly implementable once decided upon. Implementable means it should be something that has been proven elsewhere. And it's not something, it's not a new invention which nobody's ever seen before. It should get Palestinian support on one side. On the other side, it should be possible to implement it unilaterally up to a certain point in order to prevent a situation where the Palestinians prevent it from happening. It needs international support. And it has to benefit the Palestinians economically and politically in a major way. Right now, the Palestinians are severely disadvantaged economically. Their GDP is about 1/10 of Israel. And politically, of course, they have no rights, no civil rights. So that has to be changed. And of course, it also has to maintain Israel's security. Those are the minimum requirements. So based on that, we propose a federation that is like it's implemented in 30 other countries. 40% of the world's population lives in federations. Our plan proposes to extend Israeli law over the West Bank, over Judea and Samaria, and extend full civil rights and citizenship to all inhabitants who want it. We won't force anybody, but whoever wants it should be able to get it, and not should get it in an easy way, not in a difficult way. The whole area of Israel and the territories will be constitutionally federated into 30 cantons, 20 of them with a Jewish majority, 10 with a Palestinian majority, which would reflect the 2-to-1 demographic balance in that area. Gaza will initially be supported as a separate Palestinian state with a port, airport, and border passage arrangements, but may join the federation at a later stage, when both sides want it that way. The federation will have a secular constitution written jointly by Palestinians and Jews, establishing the state as a civil state with a territorial nationality. Nationality and citizenship will be one and the same. We should have written this constitution in 1948. We didn't, and we're suffering from the consequences. The federal units, the cantons, will have far-ranging cultural and regional political autonomy within the bounds of the federal constitution. The refugee issue will be tackled holistically through citizenship in Arab countries where they live now, in agreement, of course, as an agreement over the whole area, and restitution and return to the country to a limited degree. The long-range plan will be to normalize federal immigration laws to permit anyone with roots in the area to apply for immigration. This sums it up, and this has to be implemented over time, and I hope we can start as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Emanuel. So this is an opportunity for our guests to kind of chime in. You probably heard some things that resonate with you or are a little bit different from your approach in political structure. I think all three of our guests have sort of a hybrid of a federation or co-federation. Emanuel, can you just define, is there a definition of federation? Because that's going to be the main topic today. Could you give us
federation? The difference between a federation and a confederation is the federation, there's only one sovereignty, the sovereignty of the federal state. The federal subunits, the cantons or länder or states, whatever, don't have national sovereignty. They have rights according to what is in the constitution of the federation, but they don't have sovereignty and they can't act as a sovereign country. And the confederation is a unity of 2 or more states who have their own sovereignty, but they also share certain constructs in that confederation. Like there aren't very many confederations. Confederations aren't very popular. There's only one big one, that's the European Union, and that's one where they all have sovereignty. All the states have sovereignty, so it's some kind of a hybrid. But they also realize they have to go towards the federation. So this is the major difference. So again, federation, one sovereignty, basically a shared sovereignty. In our case, the Palestinians and the Jews would share the sovereignty of the federal state in a territorial unit.
All right. Okay, great. So Warda, was there something there for you that a big takeaway or something you align with, or something that's you want to elaborate on?
I know Manuel a lot of time ago, and we discussed his program also a lot of times. I think there is a problem with the right of return for Palestinians who lost their everything here, and they need, and still they have the right, and according also to the UN laws, that they have to come to their land, especially that they had already still siblings, and they have people here and families, etc., etc. It's not like it's after 2000 years ago that they left the country and now they have no siblings. Speaking about that, you see how much the Jewish people wanted to come back related to their connection to the country, even after 2000 years or more, and even after they have no family connections or emotional connection. I mean, the family and the siblings and everything about, the real time that they have now. So I don't agree with him that Palestinians should take, the citizenship of the Arab countries that they were there. If they lived by themselves, it's okay, but they lived according to war happened, and they were obliged to live. My family also, I have a big family that left my grandfather, my grandmother family village. It's called now Shlomi or Betzet or Bassa. They are in Lebanon. I know. I met some of them by chance in Denmark, but I know that they have still the feeling that some of them who still live and forced to live in different country because of the war and because of the Nakba and because of what happened in 1948. So I think they should have the chance to choose to come back or not.
So right of return, maybe Emmanuel, you can pencil that in. We're going to talk about it later. I'm going to just open up to Joseph.
My approach is holistic. It includes a lot of aspects. I haven't spoken about all of them, but I think something can be worked out. It's not
okay. Right of return. Yeah. So Joseph, anything for you and in Emmanuel's presentation you align with or want to bring up?
I just wanted a clarification from Emanuel. You mentioned, I believe you mentioned, Palestinians will have the option of becoming Israeli citizens. Do you include the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza?
That's the ones I mainly refer to. The other ones are citizens already. I mean, the ones in the territories which we would annex or incorporate under Israeli law, they will be able to choose to be Israeli citizens.
In the West Bank and Gaza?
Not Gaza. Gaza originally, not Gaza is a separate Palestinian state initially, which can join the federation at a later stage when both sides want it. But now it can't be part of the federation. It's not politically not feasible. Okay, it's simply not feasible. No, not for any other reason.
So Joseph, what is again like a big takeaway for you inside of Emmanuel's presentation?
The big takeaway for me is the same takeaway that I'm going to have Warda, is that Emanuel and Warda are suggesting substantive policies that he thinks should be implemented by whoever government will be. And I think that, with all due respect, it's presumptuous for a person to say, this is what I think the policies of the government should be. It's in my opinion, it's much more democratic and makes more sense to have the people of Israel-Palestine as a whole decide their government, have representatives of their government, parliament members, and they are the one who will decide the substantive issues. It's not for me, Joseph, or for Emanuel, or for Warda to say, we think that these policies should be implemented by a government. It should be by representatives who are elected.
Agree.
Maybe I'll ask so Maria, we're not going to do questions from the audience right now, but we're asking for some direct messaging in our YouTube for feedback. But we're actually going to have Matt maybe recreate what he heard before we move on to Warda.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Emmanuel, that was a really interesting presentation. And one of the things that struck me about what you shared is that it can be implemented unilaterally up to a certain point, which means it can be started right away. And you were very practical in the way that you broke it down. Whatever happens, Israel right now is kind of the occupying power. So that makes sense where, you could start to implement that unilaterally and start to promote autonomy and independence right away, and then hopefully move to a negotiated agreement. And Warda, you pointed out the question of refugees. Obviously, there are a lot of Palestinian refugees in different countries and in the West Bank and Gaza as well. And something will need to be done. These people have a real heartfelt connection to where they came from. And I think there's an interesting parallel between them and Jews anywhere around the world who may find themselves in distress and need a homeland to go to. Even after 2,000 years, that's a very powerful thing. So that's an interesting point that you made. And Joseph, to your point about being able to decide things going forward as an institution, as a governing decision-making body, I think that's a good observation as well, that we don't necessarily have to figure out all the answers in advance. What we can do is set into motion a structure where differences can be discussed and agreed upon.
Hey, thanks, Matt. I think it's helpful to get a little recap. And now, Warda, we're going to give you the floor for 5 to 7. You take your time, but let's really pull out the main points. And we've talked a little bit before that it might not be exactly a federation or a confederation, but it's almost like Warda's the distilled combination of a few of these things, right? So yeah, there you go.
So I said that I'm more realistic. Sorry, Emmanuel, and sorry, Joseph. I'm more realistic because I think that the situation can't let us go to federation now. It's my my dream also to have a federation between the river and the sea, and two people live in equal rights and in to recognize citizenships or even create another new citizenship in this country. But as a realistic person, and as I saw the situation now, even before the 7th of October, and just now after the 7th of October, and after this evil war, I think we can't be in a federation. I think both people now are more even disconnected than before. So I suggest a time of healing. That two countries can be independent and recognized as independent countries. So, and there is a combination between those two countries that they have three main conditions. First, both countries have to get the same recognition. Two, there is no peace with occupation, and there is also no peace without equal rights for both people from the river to the sea. So if we take the one-state solution, now it's not easy, but we can take something from the partnership that has a value that it has to be from this program. And we can take the two-state solution that we can take from this plan, the separation between the two countries, and that they have both, living in their independency, and they have their own own kind of living in the area. So because of that, I said it's a combination between the one state and two state. So what I mean there, if you see the background in my photo in my Zoom, I believe that we can take two countries that they live separately. Every country has its own capital, administrative capital. I mean, in Israel, it will be Tel Aviv. In Palestine, it will be Ramallah. Jerusalem will be a confederal government, which has also, and it has to be symbolic capital of the two nations together. Why I think it's very important that we talk Jerusalem as a capital or a symbol capital for both countries, because one of the obstacles that the last plans have before, it's how to say, the conflict about the status of Jerusalem. So Jerusalem will not be divided. I don't think that we can divide Jerusalem. So we can make capital for Tel Aviv capital for Israel, administrative capital. It has its government, it has everything, and also Ramallah the same. But Jerusalem has parliament, national parliament, national police force, and the Supreme Court. So the confederal government, which will be in Jerusalem, has to supervise the two countries. What is the national parliament is? It is coming from the both parliaments, from the Palestinians and from the Israeli, according to the percent of the people in both countries, from the river to the sea. And it has now it is equal. I think it has to be 50%, but you never know in the future how it can be. So this parliament has to make all the rules or the basic rules for the both countries. So every person from the river to the sea has to feel the same safety, the same equal rights, the same security, the same advantages that the two countries must share together. So if we have one binational parliament in Jerusalem, in the capital of the two confederation, of the two states, Israel and Palestine. So we have also a binational police force that take care of this area, which is Jerusalem, take care of the old city, the eastern place, the eastern city, the western city. So, and everyone in this city can choose the nationality of Palestinian or of Israeli citizenship. So, and I think they will be privileged a little bit, but it is Jerusalem. And, also the Supreme Court will also supervise how the implementation of the laws, the basic laws especially, that were created by the binational parliament in those two countries. So it will be something that Israel looks at it as a very huge and very high level situation status for Jerusalem, and the same Also, Palestine will look at Jerusalem as, you know, as looking forward that to have the justice in that place. So this is what the basic things of my plan. And regarding each country, the two countries, each country is have in the independent entity and one government, a prime minister, parliament, national symbols such as flag and team, anything, and will operate as independent state under the legal supervision, as I said before, of the joint parliament in the capital of Jerusalem. Now, each nation also will fulfill its values while coordinating to build two safe, successful, and independent countries. So the plan will take into account also the obstacles that in the past lands didn't address, that I spoke about one of them, which is the refugees, and also the borders. So the borders, one of the problem of Oslo also, or I think also other ancient plans, they didn't spoke about where is the borders. So I think the borders will have to be like what was in 181 rule, or united how to say it,
Resolution.
resolution, yeah. And
Warda, why don't let's start wrapping up. We're kind of at 10 minutes, so just
yeah, I'm
maybe some final
yes.
remarks, and then
Yeah,
we'll
so I
up.
will speak about that the borders will be open in those countries, that there is also a free movement from those from one country to other country, according to rules that the Supreme Court and the national parliament also you know, decide about it. Also, the security, there is also a plan of security, how to defend the country, how to make a joint army, or a joint you know, guards or something. And also about the settlements. So because I have to wrap now, maybe
Yeah.
I can speak
It's a
after
big
about
subject, Warda, I know, and I think I
Yeah.
want to thank you so much. Want to
Thank
open it up. I think Emanuel and Joseph can really see the distinctions, different distinctions you're bringing to the table with a kind of a what you called a combination, right, in two states. So Emanuel, you have anything?
My regular comment on this is that it's highly unlikely to be possible to go that way for the time being, because Israel is dead set on not doing exactly what Warda is proposing. Okay, so not that they're going for what I'm proposing, but that the things that Warda is proposing, a healing period, which would be great.
Yeah.
It's a great thing. Okay, but in order to have that, you have to have a situation where there is equal rights and there is no occupation. Okay, Israel isn't going to leave the occupied territories unless somebody is telling Israel to do that. Okay, if Trump will win, okay, and Trump has it up to here, he might tell us to move, and that would be a possibility. And I would say that would be a way of doing, but that unless that happens, okay, nobody's going to move us out of the territories. Okay, so that's a major problem I have with Warda's thing. Between the two of us, we find solutions to certain things. So you know, there is a way out of this, but
Right. That's what we're looking for today. I think we're gonna open things up for those solutions that are coming. But it's good to know the clear distinctions between each of your perspectives. And Joseph, what did you hear today with Warda's hybrid or combination federation model?
Well, my comments are very similar to the comments I made with Emanuel. Warda is making substantive suggestions on how this, about her vision for peace. And I don't have any issues with her vision. I think that the vision should be created and should be implemented in a constitutional way by people who are elected by the people of Israel and Palestine. It should not be, I mean, she could influence and show that her vision makes more sense than the other, or as she stated, more realistic than other. But I am not favoring the idea of one person. I mean, I'm not against it, but she's making substantive suggestions, and I think that in order to move forward, we need to have elected people, elected parliament members who will decide by way of voting, by way of negotiating with a constitution, what would be the ultimate vision.
I like this conversation around a constitution. We're getting some input from the audience around a humanity-based constitution. I'm a big fan of that. But Matt, what did you hear today about like maybe a quick recap from your perspective?
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Well, it's an interesting kind of, we talk about walking the narrow bridge where on the one side, you've got it all figured out, and on the other side, everything's left up to future decision making. So I think we need to like to sort of synthesize what you're all saying is some things need to be decided in advance. Okay, we're going to implement this kind of framework and governing structure and set up elections and come up with some kind of representative voice for the people. And then we're going to set that elected body free to start making additional decisions. So I think the number one question that we're all wrestling with is what's going to be workable, what's workable. So I think you all offer some really useful insights into that.
I think the way politics works, some party proposes a platform and then tries to get as many votes as possible on that. And then from then on, you go ahead. I don't quite see what, well, I haven't listened to Joseph yet, so I'm looking forward to hear how he plans to get this popular vote into action.
Great, thank you. Peter, you want to introduce Joseph?
Yeah, that's a good segue for Joseph. Joseph is going to give us I think, a more of a confederation model. Joseph, is that right? But you've been modeling this. Joseph, every twice a month models some of these political.
Simulate that, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead, share with us.
So the president of the federal government in the United States, Abraham Lincoln, said, "A government for the people, of the people, by the people will not perish." And we are proposing a government for the people, of the people, by the people, that will make peace. And the people are the Palestinian and the Israeli people. They will be the one who will be making peace. We are not proposing any substantive policies. We are proposing a system of government for the people in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. 14 million people who will elect a government based on a constitution The Constitution is available already at ipconfederation.org, which will be a secular constitution. It is a secular constitution with separation of power, with a parliament that would be separate from the executive branch, president and vice president, and a judicial branch, all equal, based on equality for the Palestinians and the Israelis together in the area that includes Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel. A common federal government that will elect 300 parliament members in 300 districts in the areas that I mentioned. Each parliament member will be elected by 47,000 people to represent his or her district. Their district could be exclusively Palestinian, for example, if it's in Gaza, but many of the districts will be mixed district, meaning Palestinians and Israelis living together, and some district will be Israeli district. We will have an election to elect the 300 parliament members and to elect a president and vice president. Whoever gets the most votes in each district will be a parliament member, regardless of whether he is Israeli or Palestinian. A Palestinian could vote for an Israeli could vote for a Palestinian in the parliament, and the same for the for the executive branch. The president will be elected if he or she receives the most votes, and the vice president will be the person who received the second number of votes of the other nationality. And they will rotate within 2 years. The federal government will be independent and separate from the Israeli and the Palestinian governments. I personally view the Israeli and the Palestinian governments as failed governments, as the problem, not the solution. And we need to start from scratch, and we need to have a government for the whole area of Israel-Palestine. We do not call for the dismantlement of the Israeli and the Palestinian governments. We call for working in cooperation with those governments and giving them a veto power on issues in which the federal government violate their sovereignty. So in order for the federal government to pass legislation, you will need 55% of the Palestinian parliament members and 55% of the Israeli parliament members to agree on the same legislation. Once the legislation passes, if it violates the sovereignty of the Israeli or the Palestinian governments, those governments will be given a veto power, and they will be able to nullify the legislation. They will have a hard time vetoing legislation that benefits the people that they claim to support, either the Israeli or the Palestinian people. If the federal government will be able to pass legislation, and it will be able to pass legislation that benefits the entire area, it will be very difficult for the Israeli and the Palestinian government to veto the legislation. The federal government, the parliament, will be able to thread the needle. What does it mean, thread the needle? It will mean that it will be able to pass legislation that neither the Israeli nor the Palestinian governments will be able to veto, because if they veto the legislation, they will be acting against their own people. So the federal government, if it is elected, and it is very, very realistic to create a federal government and to have an election, because we can conduct the election online we can create 300 parliamentary districts, and we can create a platform for Palestinians and Israelis to run for parliament and to run for president. And we can actually have the election. And in fact, we have done that in the past. We have created 300 parliamentary districts, and we have conducted the election. The election was not successful, but the mechanic, the platform, was very successful and implementable. So tell me if I passed my time, because I can go on forever and tell you the benefits.
You're right over 5. That was a lot of great content. Thank you for catching yourself, Joseph. All of the speakers and all the topics are 2 to 3 hours, I think, minimum. So we're doing great. I want to acknowledge you for just overviews and tight topics and giving the team an opportunity to reflect on it. And then we will open things up for a little bit more organic or dynamic discussion. But yeah, so if Emanuel or Warda want to step in there and maybe some big takeaways, what are you seeing? Or actually, let me start with Matt. Right?
Warda, let's hear from.
Yeah, that's right. Warda,
guest
there
first.
you go. Warda, what did you hear?
Thank you. I think I have no conflict with what Joseph said, because I believe that people, according to that, people choose the plans, and the elected people from both countries, that they have also to choose the plans and to consider what plan they will promote, and etc. etc. I have a problem, with the too much parliaments. I see, in my country, I'm in an Arabic village, and in the Arabic society, sometimes the connections between people get somebody to be elected. It's not, in many ways, it's not connected to his benefits, but to his benefits as, one of the family, or one of the hamula, or etc. etc., which mean that people sometimes elect some person according to they know him, but not as it's in many places in the Arab country. I don't know how it is in the Jewish places. Mainly because there is no many big families in the Jewish places, the Jewish cities. This problem, it's not come. I also wanted to suggest that all the people who are in the municipality positions have to be not elected, but according to their benefits, their what they have to give to the city, or to the without being as a protocol, that they will voted them or choose them as a protocol, not as all the elections that we have in the municipality power. So this is one of the problems that we can face it if we make Palestine and Israel a lot of cantons, and every canton it's regarding the place elect the one who is very local, and not regarding if he is really really how to say that, regain that in some ways, that he is really can lead the country or lead the place that he was elected in. So this is one, and so because of that, I think regarding what Joseph said, that also the percentage of the people, I agree totally, and people should choose that. That's the main effects. I didn't speak about many aspects of my program because we want also just to to make a brief about the main aspects of the program.
Thank you, Warda. So I hope you got some takeaways from that, Matt. And then Emmanuel, you want to
Yeah.
chime in?
Well, first of all, what Joseph is proposing is a highly idealized system of government, which is what you would say very nice to have. I don't think there's an example for this to implement it anywhere, and I hope you can correct me if you can. I just don't think it's this is an end state of a highly developed federation in Israel-Palestine, which is I would subscribe to immediately. But I think the way to get there is through what I'm proposing. Okay, so mine has a lot of my proposal has a lot of faults and things missing and things that need to be done, but it's more connected to the reality of today's politics and the need to work with what we have. And what Joseph is proposing is way ahead, way ahead. It's good.
Wow. Before I hand it off to Matt, I'm hearing something kind of exciting, which is, the three of you together create sort of a circuitry.
So that's really my takeaway from it.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, Emmanuel, I think I'm hearing like this time for healing, then a really practical process to get through some of the tough stuff. And we find ourselves at an end state of a very idealistic or idealized outcome. So the three of you together are like the dream team for causing peace in the Middle East. That's what I heard. I don't know, Matt, what did you hear?
Yeah, well, I've studied this matter for a long time, going back to the 90s. And in 2002, I was living in Salt Lake City working for the Olympics. And at that point, I decided to go to Washington, D.C. and study peacemaking. And I did this week-long Zen meditation retreat. And I was sitting there and thinking about, what's a fair solution? And something actually very close to the Confederation model came into my mind. And the idea is you have two states to kind of determine the majority of the administrative activities. And then the one state element gives voice to those common attachments that people have to the whole of the land, whether historical, religious, personal, etc., to kind of give people a feeling of, hey, this whole land is ours. So within that kind of hybrid vision, two states and then a common element, there's so much variation in what that can look like and how to get there. I think all three of you have shared really useful elements of what that can look like and put some really good ideas on the table that can be tools for future agreement. And it also shows me that the power of really effective communication. And, we've tried to create a space here today where we could all hear different ideas, but kind of hang our hats on some common elements among them or good ideas from all three of you. So I think we've heard a lot of that. So without getting into too much specifics, Peter, maybe we can go right into our next round.
Yeah. So this round's a little more freestyle. We've kind of got a nice download of three visions for a political system. I learned a lot. I know that federations are I have a little more grip on how federations work and the vision around them. And obviously, the Middle East has its own flavor of challenges and will be very custom, I'm sure. But let's see. Like Matt, what do you think? Do you guys want to just kind of get into it, or should we? My question is really like, where are the connections here? I heard actually a powerful like synergy in the three of you. That's what I heard, because we can't just jump right back into solutions without a healing period. It could even be generational. And then we also can't like hang our hats on idealism, like a perfect outcome, which I think is very, very compelling and very attractive for idealistic people like ourselves. We want the best possible government model, no question. And then we, Emanuel's got maybe some pathways, practical pathways to like move towards an ideal. So that's my takeaway, was actually this hybrid model. So I think we can really maybe talk about that, where what are the possibilities of some of your combined input, and what did we hear today? So
I would like to respond to Emanuel. He said that the federal government that we are proposing is way too advanced and cannot be implemented now, that we need some stages before it can be implemented. Imagine you go to a doctor and he says to you, there are good medications for your condition, but it's way too advanced for you. I'm going to give you a mediocre medication because the good medication is too good for you. That's exactly what Emanuel is saying. We have to.
Not a fair analogy. That is okay. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, look, you have to decide what's the best solution. And then once you make a decision, what is the best solution, you strive for the best solution. You do not strive to anything in between, especially not in the Middle East, especially not in the constellation of the Israeli government.
And that's not a substantive policy decision?
I'm sorry?
That's not a substantive policy decision, what you just said?
No, it's not. It's
Okay.
a decision. It's not about a two-state. It's not about one state. It's not about a Jerusalem. It's the only substantive issue that you can raise is the Constitution. That's a substantive issue, but there has to be some blueprints for the building. So the Constitution is the blueprints for the building. What do you do in the building? What kind of furnitures you put in it? What kind of pictures? What kind of elevator? That's a substantive decision. But there has to be a Constitution. There has to be a decision about what is the blueprints of the building. And I agree with you that it is presumptuous to suggest a constitution, but all democracies rely upon a constitution, not all, but most. And
Not in Israel.
a constitution is a set of principles that is agreed upon by everyone.
No, I
If
agree
there
with
is
you.
a set of principles agreed upon by everyone, then we can decide. It's basically an agreement on how we play the game.
Who tables the Constitution?
I'm sorry?
Who puts it on the table to write the Constitution?
It's already written.
No, you wrote it.
Correct. I wrote it.
Thank you, Joseph.
Yes.
You made a
Someone-
substantive decision. You made a
Someone-
He
substantive
He suggested that
No,
to
no,
the,
no.
electoral.
All
I don't know
constitutions are written.
how that differs from suggesting a federation based on the lines of
Do
confederation.
you know who wrote the American Constitution? One person.
A couple of guys.
The fact that you actually see the person who wrote the Constitution doesn't nullify the substance of the Constitution.
No, of course not.
The American Constitution was written by one person.
Oh, it's Jefferson.
This Constitution was written in consultation with hundreds of people. We conduct simulations in the last 22 years. You are saying you wrote the Constitution as if it is a personal insult. I see it as a pride. Look at the Constitution. You had an opportunity. You know me for many years. You never mentioned any criticism of the Constitution.
I'm sure it's a beautiful piece of work.
Have you read it?
I remember reading some of it. I don't think I remember the whole thing.
From what you read, is there anything you disagree with?
I didn't disagree with anything at that time.
Okay, so why attack me?
I don't attack you.
Well,
No, not
you
definitely,
mentioned-
definitely
why
not an
mention-
attack. But
Why
I think
mention me in a some negative way that I wrote it?
Good
As if
difference.
there's something wrong with it.
I said, how is that not some substantive policy decision?
Okay, substantive decision is in the context of Israel-Palestine is there going to be two states? Is there going to be one state? What's the future of Jerusalem? Where is the capital? What's going to happen with the refugees? What's going to happen with these are substantive decisions.
Also, substantive decision. Who is we the people? Who are the we?
so. Let me add a little structure to this. So instead of it's just like back and forth, raise your hand. I'll call
Okay.
up. You get a few minutes. So Warda has her hand up because it'll get a little loose here. You know, if we're just like back and
Better
forth.
that way.
Yeah, let's add a little structure, integrity here. Warda, what?
Okay,
I'm gonna give you 2 minutes.
I
Okay.
disagree with Emanuel, for example, because I know how the constitution of Joseph was built by, money, money suggestion, money consultation, voting even in the simulation. I think I have no problem with any constitution, for example, in my program, that we can adapt it. For example, the things that we needed, we can take it. The things that don't suit the situation or the confederal, the joint confederal, we can think about different things. As you know, we can also adapt any other constitution from other countries. So it's not, about this is the last word about or the last say about this constitution, because we have also the parliament, the joint parliament, who also can consult with the Israeli parliament and the Palestinian parliament about every part of the constitution. So if we have some constitution that people from both sides or from all over the world work on it, why not use it? But to make it more convenient with the situation that we have. So I don't have any problem with Joseph's constitution if it's give an answer for everything or the aspects that I didn't spoke about it, but I think also in Joseph's constitution he also mentioned it.
Very good. Yeah, like I definitely hear, that's what I call dynamic governance, right? You have
Exactly.
a constitution and then you get to make a bespoke solution given the situation. But the anchoring in the constitution is very powerful. And I think that's something we hang on to in America. And we missed a few cues from the Iroquois Indians. The Iroquois had a federation and a constitution we took a lot from, but we only took what was beneficial for our settlers. So I think we need to redo it. How about you, Emanuel? Do you have any constitutional components in yours or comments?
First of all, the way the idea of proposing a federal solution is to force the issue of a constitution. Okay, Israel needs a constitution and is fighting valiantly to prevent this from happening. Okay, when you go towards the federal system, there is no way around it. You have to have a constitution, and that's the way I want this to work. Or not that I want it to work. I think that's the only way it'll work. I don't think Israel will have a constitution unless it'll be forced to do so, and the federal proposal would force the issue. And I'd be happy to use Joseph's constitution as a baseline, okay, as something to work on. But there are plenty of other constitutions which could be worked on. I think the key is to make it simple and make it palatable. But a constitution is necessary, and I think the only way a constitution will happen is if we resolve at the same time we also resolve the conflict with the Palestinians. We need the Big Bang in order for this to happen. If it's not the Big Bang, it's not going to happen.
Got it. Got it. Maybe Joseph, can you share with us some of are there like key points to your constitution that we would resonate with right away? You know, like maybe the top 5 constitutional distinctions, I would call them, human rights.
Well, the Constitution speaks about separation of power in the federal government, a legislative branch with 300 parliament members, Palestinians and Israelis together, an executive branch with a president and vice president, one Palestinian, one Israeli, rotating in 2 years, and a judicial branch that has equality between Palestinians and Israelis that that has to be fair to both sides. So the judicial branch cannot decide a Palestinian judge, a Palestinian, for instance, who is subjected to a prosecution by the federal government, in order to find him guilty or liable, you need to have 2 Palestinian judges deciding against him, or majority Palestinian judges deciding against him. If it is an Israeli who is being prosecuted, you need to have 2 Israeli judges or majority Israeli judges deciding against him. So it's basically a system that would give equality to the Palestinian and the Israeli people in a federal government.
Sorry, that's out of my timer. No, I got it. Keep going, and then.
And the idea is that the federal government will be independent and separate from the Israeli and the Palestinian government. It does not have religious undertone. It's separate between religion and government. It is a government that would be created independently, not by the Israeli government, not by the Palestinian government, really in competition with the Israeli and the Palestinian government. Now, you may want to ask me, why is it giving a veto power to the Israeli and the Palestinian government? The reason is that those governments are in control. They have power. They have political power. They have military power. And in order to get their cooperation, you will need to give them a veto power. Otherwise, it would become a subversive organization that is trying to undermine existing government. So you have to play ball with them, recognize their existence, but not necessarily recognize their legitimacy. And by the way, they don't have legitimacy in Israel-Palestine because they are not elected by the Palestinian and the Israeli people. They're only elected, the Israeli government is only elected by the Israeli people, even though it occupies the West Bank and Gaza. And the Palestinian government is not elected by neither. It hasn't been elected by the Palestinian or the Israeli people. So we need a secular, federal, democratic government that would treat everyone fairly, equally, and would give an equal opportunity for both sides to come up with legislation that would benefit the entire people of Israel and Palestine.
In the meantime, I wanted just to add something regarding the Constitution. There are several movements in Israel who are in the process of writing a constitution. Not a single one of them has dealt with the major issue of the first line of the Constitution. It says, "We the people." Who are we the people in that constitution? Okay? Israel hasn't decided yet, because it hasn't decided yet where the borders of Israel are and what happens with the population who's inside those borders. Okay, so we're about 3 generations back before we can even think of what the really progressive proposal that Joseph wants to implement. For him, it's understood that we're all equal. Okay, it's not understood to the Israeli people that all are equal in the Constitution. They think that Jews have preferential treatment for this or that. So we're in a problematic time.
Well, Israel has not decided who we, the people, are.
Yes.
Because Israel is a failed state. It's based on Jewish supremacy, a Zionist idea that is accepting the idea of controlling, occupying people, and denying their right to be equal.
Yep.
So the people it's very, very clear. It's the people who live in Israel and Palestine that are controlled by the government of Israel, except that you are somehow suggesting that we, the people, for some unknown reason, is not known who they are. But Israel knows exactly who they are. It controls them, both the Palestinian and the Israeli people.
We're talking about semantics. They don't think about it. They don't think about it.
I agree.
Whenever I ask them, I'm in those groups. Whenever I ask this, they look at me and they don't understand the question. But
I agree. Look,
what are the borders of Israel? Where are the borders of Israel? We don't have borders. We don't have fixed borders. Okay?
Well, like I said, I totally agree. Israel is a failed state. It never gave peace to the people of Israel, to the Jewish people, or the Palestinian people. It only gave them 76 years of wars, and it has no vision for peace. So for you to suggest that we have to look at the Israeli model as our guiding force, I totally disagree with that.
Well, let's Joseph, let's take a break here because we're at our kind of scheduled time. I think some juicy stuff here. And I'm going to let Matt sort of wrap up the call, but we're going to keep it open. There's some questions from our audience. Larry's here, and Jess and Phil, and we're gonna keep this going as long as you guys are in it and able to. But Matt's gonna wrap up now and sort of get us to close out the actual program, Critical Conversations. And Matt, why don't I hand it over to you, and then we'll keep going.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. Thank you to all our guests, Warda, Emanuel, and Joseph. So I'll just offer some kind of concluding thoughts and remarks. Then we'll stop the recording and the live stream, but we'll stay online and we can conclude together with our guests. So time will tell what a final status solution looks like. We don't know what that's going to look like eventually. But what I think we can conclude is that thoughtful communication amongst committed people who care about peace and who care about Israelis and Palestinians is important. And we can relate to one another with respect and dignity. We can certainly have differences of opinions and different ideas and discuss them. And, sometimes that involves an emotional reaction. But they're really important conversations that must be had, and we owe it to ourselves and to future generations to have those conversations. And whatever gets decided probably is going to have to be done by representatives of the Israeli and Palestinian governments. Even just the question of representation is not always so straightforward, especially amongst Palestinians and whatever government will emerge in Gaza after all of this. So we just don't know. But certainly the people have a right to decide and a right to a good life. So, but I think this conversation today has been really useful and insightful. The two-state solution and as it's typically defined has been kind of standard policy of the United States and others on this conflict for a long time, and maybe eventually we'll have that. But it hasn't worked so far. So I think it's very appropriate to look at the whole range of different options and different hybrid solutions. And as civil society actors, we get to come up with our own proposals, and we can make requests of governments and government officials to do certain things or to implement certain things. We can come up with suggestions for a constitution or common values or common ideas. And at some point, we get to say, all right, we're going to agree on this. We're going to give it a shot. And it's probably some of it will work and some of it won't. And we'll keep doing better and making improvements as we go forward. So it is appropriate to think expansively, I think, as we did today. And we get to look, what are the structures that get put into place? Some of them get put into place right away to get started. Others are part of a kind of a comprehensive agreement where we get to say, all right, we agree we're going to do this, and then we do it. But as civil society, we can start putting structures into place right now for communication and dialogue and exchanging of different ideas and proposals, and start right away, which is what this conversation today is an example of. So just to kind of put it in a bigger context, we have an election coming up next week, and whoever the president of the United States is, whatever their pronoun of choice, they'll have a major opportunity to be leaders on this question. And of course, representation we talked about is a big challenge. But we started off talking about how the terrible year that we've had maybe has a silver lining where we can think in terms of a radical departure from the status quo, because we see how the status quo isn't working. So you all have been a great demonstration today of, as we say, listening for the gold in each other's statements. So I acknowledge you all for your really wonderful thoughts and ideas, and for being here and for sharing, and of course for working on this issue for many, many years. And it's not easy when you stand up for peace, because invariably you attract people who disagree with you and want to argue with you and demean your intentions. And I know that really all three of you are people with golden hearts who are very much love Jews, love Christians, love Arabs and Palestinians, and just very committed to peace and coexistence. So thank you for who you are. Thank you for being here today. To everyone watching, thank you for participating. You can learn more about the Middle East Peace Civic Forum by going to our website, MEPCF.org. We are enthusiastic to receive your contributions financially so we can keep doing this work and actually expand and really expand our impact in the civil society peace conversation. So thank you all for everything you do for peace. And thank you, Peter, for being our extraordinary facilitator today. You did a great job. And to our whole team for all your work, thank you. And with that, I declare our session today complete.
Thank you. You did a wonderful job, and I appreciate
Thank
the
you.
opportunity to tell the people, probably as many, the whole world, about our vision for peace. Thank you so much.
I think there was
Thank you.
I think you
Thank
offered
you
a
very
lot of
much.
insights for a lot of people today. Thank you.
Thank you
We
very
appreciate
much
you. We
for
appreciate
all of you. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Emanuel, and thank you, Warda, and thank you, Matt and Peter.
Thank you all.
All
Bye-bye.
right, you're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, Phil.
All right.